which relates to a specific event that occurred in May 2011. And this event is commonly referred to as the Running Sunday event. You'll soon find out why. And you can see details about what happened in the days between, particularly on the 8th of May, but in some of the days just before that, in the annex that we've handed out for you. The judges are going to be playing the members of this subcommittee. The participants play representatives of the government of Piroti, and of the resistance movement, we'll call them that, for identification purposes, just so that you know a little bit about the actual events that they're going to be discussing. These are Running Sunday and other events of the 2nd to 8th of May 2011. So it began actually on the 2nd of May 2011 when the rebel forces, who had a lot of people sympathetic to them in the military, including a naval officer called Benedicto Arnaldo, learned from this officer that there's a fleet of ships en route to Piroti, and one of these ships in this fleet is carrying various types of ammunition. So the ship has anti-personnel mines, cluster munitions, and more interestingly perhaps, a chemical agent officially named, just let me see if I can get this right, dischargerite. I haven't got the name, I should get it right. Now what this thing, that's also known actually as loose stool gas. That might give you a bit more of an idea of what it does. And it got that nickname because of its propensity to incapacitate enemy belligerents by inducing bouts of rather severe diarrhea. So it's a very unpleasant thing. And so these ships are on the way, and the NRA decided it has to stop these nasty munitions from getting to Piroti. And so they launched an operation where they plant mines on the projected routes of these ships, 32 nautical miles away from the shoreline of Piroti, further still from the shoreline of the other states and international lawyers among you. And these mines actually do explode. Unfortunately, they don't blow up the ship with munitions. They blow up a ship that's got some food and uniform supplies for the army that was manufactured in China and was on its way to Piroti, as well as another ship with a lot of T-shirts of El Generales. But the munitions arrived safely, and the NRA decided it still has to do something to protect itself from these munitions. And so they launched, the munitions arrived at a port in the capital of Piroti, and they decided they're going to attack the warehouses where they're being stored. They launched a two-pronged attack against this warehouse. The one element is really designed to attract attention to the other side of the port, and so they fire with mortar shells, I think from the western side of the port. So obviously there's a lot of activity on the western side. Meanwhile, some of the NRA commandos slip in and plant some bombs on the eastern side, and this destroys the anti-personnel mines and the cluster munitions. Unfortunately for them, I shouldn't take sides, they didn't manage to blow up the dischargerite, because that was being stored quite cleverly perhaps, but not necessarily legally, we'll have to see. That was stored separately in wooden boxes that were stamped with a symbol. You can see a drawing of that in the piece of paper we gave out to you. It's a sort of red lion with a kind of sun drawn in the background, and it's in a sort of diamond shape. That was on the boxes, and the NRA people thought that probably wasn't munitions, and so they didn't do anything about them. And it turns out that that was where the gas, this chemical agent, was being stored. Now, Piroti was rather unhappy about having its port blown up, and by the way, the explosion at the port caused considerable damage. And so they decide that they're going to conduct an operation of their own against the NRA. This operation is codenamed Montezuma's Revenge. And what they do is fly over areas of the Lupo jungle in which they suspect, or intelligence reveals, that NRA forces are hiding. And well, there are various reasons why they describe the reasons why they're doing this, but from a military perspective, perhaps the clearest description you get is that, how should I explain this? When the chemical takes effect, the people affected by it emit an odor that is rather unpleasant and can be picked up from a distance. And what Perotti has done is they've got these dogs, 20 basset hounds and 35 Alsatians that have been trained to find people emitting this particular scent. The Alsatians also attack people if they're carrying arms. So the idea is that they'll drop the stuff on top and then they'll be able to find the people in their hideouts. It doesn't work quite as planned, unfortunately. It does have a very unpleasant effect, we subsequently discover, on the NRA personnel, but the dogs don't like it very much either. In fact, the basset hounds refuse altogether, totally well basset hounds, they refuse to enter this area of the jungle. The Alsatians do go in, but the chemical has an effect on them and they don't really function very effectively. There are a number of instances in which they are involved. In one case, some NRA people who really wanted to get out of this area of the jungle that had been affected by the gas simply wanted to surrender. So they left the area and lifted up their arms to indicate that they intended to surrender, but of course the Alsatians are trained to attack anyone holding a rifle, so they would rather savagely attack. And then there's another incident you could read about with a basset hound. We'll skip that. The whole operation was eventually called off because, unfortunately for the Perotti army, there was a change of wind and it blew the gas into quite a large city, which you could learn a bit about from the background document that we gave the students. And of course, it wasn't a very pleasant time for the people who lived in that city, and the government was under quite intense pressure to stop using this gas. Subsequently, I'll stop in a moment, I just would point out that the lawyers for the Perotti military were under some pressure to justify the use of this munition, and they did say that, they actually said that part of the rationale was actually a humanitarian rationale, because this gas enabled them, so they thought, in the end it didn't turn out that way, but it would enable them to execute their operation while endangering less people, including both NRA personnel who suffer perhaps something unpleasant but wouldn't necessarily be killed, and other people around the area, as opposed to, for example, flying over the jungle and blowing it up. You just emit this stuff. It's also more friendly to the environment, so it's basically humanitarian. So that's more or less the background. It's a little more detailed, but as I said, you can read it here. And what I'm going to do now is, in a second, I'll call up the members of the subcommittee on legal issues, our judges, but I will mention before that who they are in real life. I don't remember their names for the purpose of the test, but you have it over there, I can see. But I'll call them up now. So we have Matthew Happold. Yes, why don't you come up? Yes. They, by the way, they really all deserve a round of applause. All of them, they've been fantastic. Norman Bell. I'll call them up over Sylvain Bouchon. And Manuela Vidal. Okay, and perhaps you'll now join me in welcoming the participating teams. The teams for in real life are the teams from IBC Sevilla and Hebrew University. For our purposes, they're from Perotti and NRA. Okay. Take a mic down. Is it working? Am I doing something wrong? It's on. Good. Thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a public hearing of the
subcommittee on legal issues of the Paroti Reconciliation Commission, and what we are going to be doing today is obviously we are tasked with issuing a public report on violations of the laws of war committed by parties during the course of hostilities, the recent conflict. And today we are here to discuss the events of May 2011, in particular the events of Runny Sunday, that is May the 8th of that year. I'm the chair of the committee. My name is, I'm retired Chief Justice Monde Tutulio, and I'm joined with my deputies here on my right, Professor Arturo Chasella. I'm terribly sorry, Professor Dr. Arturo Chasella. You could probably tell he's a professor by his corduroy jacket. Yes, and the patches. Yeah, he's forgot the patches. And on my far left, by my former colleague, retired Justice Alvio Saxo. And last evening, you can come well, I'll call you retired Justice Saxo. But last and certainly not least, on my left, another expert on international law, or an expert on international law perhaps, Professor Philippa Sandosi. Now we've got quite a lot to get through during this hearing. I'm very glad to see that we have very distinguished, high-level representation, very confident, we know already, representation for both the parties, both the government of Paroti and the TCP NRA. What I propose is that we give each party 10 minutes to address us, outlining what they consider the key legal issues that we should consider today, and then we'll have an open floor for discussion and debate with myself and my fellow committee members asking whatever questions that we think might help elucidate matters. We'll then conclude, I think, with giving each party a brief 2-minute concluding statement, and hopefully that should wrap up things. I should say, however, very controversial. We're dealing with controversial matters. I realise that things have got heated in the past. I really don't want any more violence during these meetings. So I would ask everyone, including, certainly don't want any more violence from my fellow committee members, particularly Justice Maxwell. So I would ask, yes, very good. I can turn your microphone off, you realize. And so I would ask that all comments come through me so I can direct the discussion. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's start. And I call upon the representatives of the government of Paroti. The floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Let us start by saying that Paroti is very thankful for the opportunity to elaborate on our point of view regarding these matters, the events that took place on May 2011. We sincerely hope the committee's report, expected to be issued quite soon regarding the violations of law, will be one that both sides can live with. We will start. First, we will address the classification of the situation and the applicable law. After that, my two colleagues will address two main issues. First, the attack on the port, and also the attack on our ships. I am Advocate Fad Benin. To my right, my colleague, Advocate Maya Nidna, and Advocate Valen. Please, Advocate Valen, if you may start.
Thank you, Ms. I will address the classification of the conflict at the time that this took place. As you are aware, this was a non-international armed conflict between the state of Paroti and the NRA. In this situation, the applicable law is Common Article